Hi guys, I hope everyone's enjoying the conference, by the way. I love Hong Kong, it's a great place to be. So, my name is Mccorry, and today I'm going to present about onboarding next generation of users on the Web3. But before I get in the Arbitrum, I want to take a step back and just remind everyone, what makes Ethereum so special? Why do we care about Ethereum? Why do we care about blockchains and Web3? And hopefully that will allude to the fact of why we should care about Arbitrum as well. So I'm sure some people here work in finance. We put our finance hat on. And when we care about Web3, what we really care about is transaction insurance. So if Alice gives a coin to Bob, who's responsible for making sure that Bob only gets one coin? Bob doesn't get 2 coins, Bob doesn't get half a coin, he only gets 1 coin, and it's done in a timely manner. So the first thing we care about is reachability. Who can Alice transact with? Then we care about who enforces the rules. Who makes sure the transaction executes as expected. And finally, auditability. So let's say I want to look at a transaction 10 years ago. How can I verify that transaction was actually done correctly as well? So in the Web2 world for the past 30 years, we've always had to rely on a trusted intermediary like a bank or an institution or some company to facilitate transactions. And so we rely on that company to also enforce the rules. That will be the human deal, handling the deal, or it will be the software run by the companies to make sure that the transactions automatically get processed. But the problem comes up with auditability. How can I verify that the company's doing the right thing for all their users' transactions? As a user, there's no way I can check. If I go to HSBC, they're not going to let me check their database to make sure they're doing their transactions correctly. So we have to trust the employees with access to audit their transactions, and we have to rely on a third-party audit company, the Big Four. They have to, get to the company's database, look at the books, and they have to go, I think the company's doing the right thing. And so in this scenario for the past 30 years, it's so easy for things to go wrong. Software bugs can go unnoticed, humans can make mistakes, and bad record keeping. I'm sure people here work in finance. Raise your hand if you have to deal with spreadsheets. Spreadsheets? Over there, look at all those spreadsheet guys. It's so hard to keep a spreadsheet up to date with accurate and correct information. It's a really, really hard task. And so it makes it really difficult to audit and keep factual data as well. And ultimately, a company could also disappear and not facilitate the transaction at all, which is why regulation is so important in this world to make sure that users are only interacting with trustworthy institutions. So with that in mind, what makes Ethereum so special is that it's an entire field of engineering on trust, auditability, and safety. That is the focus of Web3. Now, what's nice about Web3 is that I can interact with anyone on the internet as long as they have an Ethereum address. But most importantly, who enforces the rules? Anyone can. I can download the blockchain software, I can run the blockchain software, and I can enforce the rules of the network alongside everyone else and everyone in this room. We don't have to rely on a trusted intermediary to do the right thing. And auditability. Again, if I run the blockchain software, it's very easy for me to audit historical transactions. I can fetch a transaction on Ethereum from 10 years ago. I can look at it and say, yep, that transaction was processed correctly according to the rules agreed at the time. But of course, in Web3, bad things can still happen. It's very difficult to implement secure smart contracts. And actually, there's too much transparency. Ethereum and Web3 are the most transparent systems we have ever built. They are literally exceedingly transparent, which makes it bad for some financial applications. So stepping back again, what makes Ethereum so special to begin with? Ethereum allows anyone to check the system is alive, its integrity is intact, and to transact without trusted intermediaries. What we're really trying to do in this field is replace human trust with cryptographic proofs. And if you recognize that line is from the Bitcoin white paper over 14, 15 years ago now. This entire field focuses on removing human trust as much as possible. But thanks to that vision, we can transfer assets without a bank. We can vote without a tallying authority. We can have auctions without an auctioneer, and we can trade without an exchange. All these applications exist today on Ethereum and other networks, and they're used every single day. But unfortunately, as most people here are probably aware, Ethereum is too expensive. I would probably argue today, in my professional opinion, and of course as an argument, that Ethereum is probably more secure and decentralized than Bitcoin. But with great security comes great cost. So 2 weeks ago, I had to deploy a Gnosis safe, a multi-sig wallet, and it cost me $100. It's not very accessible. It's way too expensive for the everyday user. I did not want to pay $100 for that transaction. So the open problem we're all trying to solve, all of these layer 2s, can we build a system that can inherit Ethereum security, Ethereum level security, but with low fees and high throughput? Is it possible to take assets that live in Ethereum, move it to an off-chain system, transact as much as you want here, and then bring the funds back to Ethereum, but while still inheriting the security of Ethereum itself? And it is possible. All the roll-ups and layer 2 protocols, including Arbitrum, are trying to solve this goal. And Arbitrum relies on fraud proofs in order to facilitate, in order to inherit the security of Ethereum. So it is possible. So layer 2s and roll-ups like Arbitrum are trying to extend Ethereum with a low fees, high throughput. There's low-cost transactions. We're doing our best to have it secured by Ethereum, and it's drop-in compatible. What's really nice about networks like Arbitrum is that you have the EVM, you have Solidity, you have your wallets, your infrastructure, all the dApps. Everything works just like Ethereum, but it's faster, it's cheaper, and I don't know, as a much better user experience in my opinion, at least anyway. Now, Arbitrum has 2 different networks currently. There's Arbitrum 1 and Arbitrum Nova. Historically, Arbitrum 1 has been used for DeFi and NFT. It's typically called the home of DeFi in the roll-up world. And then Nova focuses on gaming and social. Now, what I really like about having 2 networks for Arbitrum is that really roll-ups are a place for experimentation. They allow us to test out different configurations and features. We can play with the block times, the gas fees, the virtual machines, the transaction ordering policies. We can have these rapid experiments to work out what's better for users and what's better for developers. What's also exciting, and actually at the foundation, I spend most of my day with the community, with the Arbitrum DAO. Both chains are governed by the community. And the DAO has 2 mission statements. One, it's up to the DAO to decide whether to upgrade the Arbitrum networks. And they also have a treasury that they can spend on initiatives as well. And they're exceedingly active. They're always catching me off guard, to be honest. So you can read the transparency report, you can go on the forum and see what the DAO's getting up to. Now, I'm a researcher, I like experiments, but that's not really useful long term. We need, production-ready systems. And Arbitrum is running in production. It's very popular. And I believe Arbitrum 1's been running now for 3 years. I think they launched in, I think it was around September 2021, if I remember right. So Arbitrum 1, currently has around $15 billion locked into the system. In terms of TVL, it represents 40% of the rollout market share. There's over 2,000 dApp integrations and over 18 million unique addresses. The Arbitrum ecosystem is alive and well. As I mentioned, it's basically the home of DeFi for layer 2s. You have Uniswap, SushiSwap, OpenSea, GMX, Camelot, TreasureDAO, whole host of dApps living and running on Arbitrum every single day. And they call Arbitrum their home as well, which is really cool. And also, TradFi institutions are now also supporting Arbitrum. So there was this announcement recently with Robinhood, where in the Robinhood app, you'll be able to interact and swap cryptos using Arbitrum in the back end. So that's also really cool. Now, that's the ecosystem part of it. Again, I'm a researcher. I care about technical excellence, and Arbitrum really strives for that. So one thing I like to highlight is actually, who's aware of L2Beat? Raise your hand if you know L2Beat. Interested? Cool. Some people in the audience know who L2Beat are. So L2Beat is like the referee for all layer 2s and rollups. If a rollup makes a security claim, L2Beat are basically going to validate whether that security claim is correct or not. So they're the referee holding us all accountable to the claims we make about security for our rollups. Now, what's nice about Arbitrum 1 is that Arbitrum 1 is currently, the only rollup with a general purpose EVM that's considered a stage 1 rollup. Now, we're ahead right now, but of course, this is a competition. Every single rollup is competing in terms of security, to become a stage 2 rollup and to be the most secure rollup. And I like to call this out because I really love the fact we're in an industry that focuses on security and protecting users' assets, and we have an independent referee who's always holding us accountable. So that's fantastic to have in any industry, especially for cryptocurrencies. Now, in terms of technology as well, I mentioned before, Arbitrum relies on fraud proofs to protect the system. It's called an optimistic rollup. Now, what the foundation has funded is research into a new protocol called BOLD, which will hopefully be the holy grail of what we want for an optimistic rollup. It's a fraud-proof system that's permissionless that would allow anyone in this room to participate in the fraud-proof game. So we've funded the research. Hopefully it's going to be announced soon. And hopefully you guys could use it someday to protect your own Orbit chains in the future. And hopefully you'll get in the Arbitrum one as well. Another piece of work the foundation has funded that I'm also really excited by is called Stylus. So rollups are an exciting place because our goal is to look and feel like Ethereum, but we can go further than just Ethereum. And Stylus is a good example of this. So even though we'll have the EVM and Solidity smart contracts, we will also have a WASM virtual machine environment where you can implement a Rust smart contract, and your Rust smart contract can interact with Solidity smart contracts as a first-class citizen. So we sort of call this the EVM Plus, because it's the EVM plus WASM plus Rust, and they're all first-class players. So I'm really excited for that. We funded that work, and hopefully it'll be announced soon. And if you ever attend hackathons, it's already available to play around with, test out, deploy dummy Rust programs, and get your hands dirty. So the last thing I want to finish on, and I've sort of believed in this vision now for many years, is that rollups are really a tech stack. If you consider the Arbitrum chains like Arbitrum 1, Arbitrum Nova, that's sort of like the testing ground, the battleground for getting this tech ready before everyone begins using this tech stack. A bit like Linux, it's going to go everywhere. And so I stole this quote from Loy Lu and Conduit, where rollup is the new server. So I would expect in the next 5 years, anytime you deploy a new server or a new database that interacts with crypto assets, you're probably going to use a rollup as a tech stack. A bit like how you deploy Linux, you're going to deploy a rollup stack on top of that to handle crypto assets. And so at the foundation, we spent a lot of time working on the Arbitrum expansion program. This is where we changed the license to make it easier for people to take the Arbitrum tech stack and deploy it for their own network and their own chain. And we call this the Orbit chains. And it sort of reminds me of this old quote. So many years ago, I was an intern at IBM for a year. So I remember this quote where Thomas Watson said, I think there's a world market for only 5 computers. And he said that in 1943. On hindsight, that's a really dumb statement, isn't it? Because there's computers everywhere now. And actually, as I was writing this slide, I realized, there's already more than 5 rollups. So we've already invalidated that statement. There's more than 5 rollups today. There's going to be hundreds of rollups in a few years. As I mentioned, rollup is the new server. It's going to be everywhere. And Orbit is one tech stack that you can use in order to deploy your own rollup as well. And Orbit is getting popular. There's currently 20+ Orbit chains announced. Some Orbit chains have already been, during the panel session, some Orbit chains were discussed already during that panel session. That was really cool. I had to Google it myself to make sure it was Orbit. But generally, there's lots of Orbit chains coming through the pipeline now, and I'm really excited to see people use this, tech stack. And I think for Arbitrum, Arbitrum was founded in 2018, if I remember, so it's been under development now for 6 years. So I'm really excited for people to actually use the tech stack in production for their own business needs and for what they need. And that's it. That's my final slides, guys. So thank you very much for listening, and I hope you have a great time at the conference.